So there I was, watching a cop wrench my private property sign out of my own damn land. He tossed it to the side and told me the property belonged to the HOA now, all while our brand new HOA president, Karen Rollins, stood behind him, smiling like the devil herself. They were trying to steal my entire business right in front of me, and they were using a cop as their personal repo man to do it. To really get why seeing that cop on my lawn felt like a violation on a cellular level, you got to understand what that land is. It's not just a business, it's not just a piece of property. For me, it's the whole damn story. See, my life is split into two halves, before the knee and after the knee. Before, I was on my way. I was Jack Callahan, the kid with the golden swing. I was tearing up the minor league golf circuit, I had a low-level sponsorship with a golf ball company, and I could feel a spot on the PGA Tour getting closer with every tournament. Golf was it for me. It was this perfect, orderly universe where the only things that mattered were physics, focus, and nerve. I lived out of the suitcase, ate bad hotel breakfasts, and I was happier than I'd ever been. It was my entire world, this beautiful green bubble of potential. Then came a rainy Thursday at a qualifier in North Carolina. I was on the back nine playing well. I took a step back to line up a putt, my cleats hit a slick patch of grass, and my left knee decided to go in a direction it was never designed to go. It wasn't a dramatic screaming fall, it was just a quiet, sickening pop. It was the sound of a door slamming shut forever. 3 surgeries and a year of brutal physical therapy later, the doctors gave me the verdict. "You'll walk, Jack," my surgeon told me, patting my good knee. "You might even play around for fun now and then. But the kind of torque you need for a professional swing, your knee won't hold up. I'm sorry." My wife Stacy, she tried. God bless her, she really did. But she'd married a rising star, a man with a singular, all-consuming purpose. What she ended up with was a ghost. A guy who limped around the house watching golf on TV with the sound off, his face a mask of quiet, bottomless rage. The guy she married was gone, replaced by this bitter stranger. We drifted apart, and the divorce was less of a bang and more of a sad, quiet sigh. I can't even blame her. I wouldn't have wanted to be married to me back then either. So there I was, pushing 30, alone, with a knee that ached when it rained, and an insurance payout that felt like blood money. I had no idea what to do. The only thing I knew was grass, sand, and the beautiful, maddening geometry of a golf course. Taking a desk job felt like a death sentence. That's when I saw the ad. It was for a huge, weirdly shaped parcel of land on the far edge of town. It bordered a new housing development called Tranquil Streams or something equally bland. Nobody wanted it. It was too big for one house, too uneven for a developer to bother with, and too far from anything to be convenient. It was considered a useless, scrubby wasteland. But I drove out there one afternoon and stood on a small hill overlooking it all. And I didn't see a wasteland. I saw a canvas. I could practically see the layout in my mind's eye. A tricky par 3 hugging that line of trees, a long par 5 stretching down into the gully, a green tucked right up against that little creek. I saw my second chance. It was the stupidest, most reckless decision I've ever made. I poured every penny I had into that land. I cashed out my retirement savings, took out a loan that made my banker sweat, and bought that useless plot. For the next 2 years, that piece of dirt was my entire existence. I bought a used Airstream trailer and parked it under a big oak tree, and that was my home. I was up before the sun every day, working alongside the crews I hired. I learned about irrigation, soil pH, drainage systems. At night, I'd sit at a rickety folding table in my trailer, surrounded by topographical maps and architectural plans, designing and redesigning each hole until it was perfect. I remember the day the first real patch of fairway grass started to come in. It was this perfect, vibrant green. I literally got down on my hands and knees and just touched it. It was real. This crazy dream in my head was actually becoming real. Of course, before I even broke ground, I did everything by the book. My land abutted the Tranquil Streams HOA, so I knew I had to get their blessing. I put on my only suit, combed my hair, and went to one of their board meetings in the community clubhouse. The president back then was a guy named Mr. Henderson, a retired civil engineer. He was a straight shooter, an old-school gentleman who believed in rules and property rights. I laid out my whole plan for them. A beautiful, professionally designed 9-hole executive course. I showed them the blueprints, the environmental impact studies, the works. I explained that it would be a quiet, clean business that would dramatically increase the value and appeal of their entire neighborhood by turning the ugly scrubland next door into a park-like setting. They loved it. Henderson and the old board were thrilled. "Son," Henderson said to me after they voted unanimously to approve my project, "you're taking a white elephant and turning it into a prize stallion for this whole community." He shook my hand, and that was that. We signed the official papers, all above board, granting me the right to operate my commercial enterprise. There were no weird clauses, no hidden agendas. It was a simple, honest agreement between neighbors. That's how Coyote Run was born. I named it that because a family of coyotes lived in the woods nearby, and sometimes, in the quiet of the early morning, you'd see one of them trotting silently across a fairway like a ghost. For 5 years, it was paradise. My business thrived. I built a small, handsome clubhouse with a porch where people could have a beer after their round. I knew most of my customers by name. As a thank you to the community that had welcomed me, I gave every resident of the Tranquil Streams HOA a permanent, deep discount. It was my way of being a good neighbor. That place saved me. It gave me a purpose again. Every morning, smelling the fresh-cut grass, hearing the thwack of a well-hit drive, seeing people enjoy the world I had built from nothing, it healed something in me that the doctors couldn't touch. It wasn't just land, it was my resurrection. And that is what Karen Rollins was trying to take away. You know, for the first few months after Karen Rollins took over the HOA, I barely noticed a difference. I'd see her walking her little yappy dog, and she'd give me this big, bright politician's wave. She was all about initiatives and community engagement. She started a neighborhood watch, organized a chili cook-off, and sent out these glossy newsletters full of exclamation points. It all seemed harmless enough. Annoying, maybe, but harmless. I was busy running my course, living my life. The HOA was just background noise. The first sign that something was deeply wrong came in a thick, cream-colored envelope left in my mailbox. It had the Tranquil Streams HOA logo embossed in gold at the top. It felt way too formal for a neighborhood association, more like something you'd get from a high-powered law firm. Inside was a letter, 2 pages long, printed on the same heavy cardstock. It was from Karen. It wasn't a fine or a complaint. It was, and I quote, a proposal for a community-forward partnership. My first reaction was just confusion. I sat down on the porch of the clubhouse and read it again. The letter was a masterpiece of corporate nonsense speak. It was full of phrases like leveraging community assets, synergistic oversight, and proactive stakeholder engagement. It took me a minute to cut through the jargon and figure out what she was actually saying. She was proposing that the HOA take over the day-to-day administrative management of Coyote Run. I just stared at the words. She went on in this incredibly condescending tone about how running a golf course was surely a significant burden for a sole proprietor like myself. She praised what I'd built, calling it a vital community hub, and because it was so vital, she argued, it needed to be protected and managed by the community itself to ensure its longevity and guarantee equitable access for all residents. She was offering to alleviate my burden by having her and her newly formed Leisure and Landscape Committee handle the bookings, the maintenance contracts, and the finances. For a small management fee, of course. I actually laughed out loud. It was the most absurd, presumptuous thing I had ever read. My business was thriving. I didn't have a burden. I had a life that I loved. And equitable access? Every single resident of her HOA already got a massive discount. This wasn't a proposal. It was a power grab wrapped in the language of a corporate retreat. She was acting like I was some struggling hobbyist who needed a grown-up to come in and run things properly. I figured the best way to handle it was to be direct, polite, and firm. Treat it like the ridiculous misunderstanding it clearly was. I went inside, sat down at my computer, and typed out a short, professional email. Dear Miss Rollins, thank you for your proposal. I appreciate the board's interest in the success of Coyote Run. However, as you know, Coyote Run is a private business operating on my private property. While I am very happy with the relationship I have with the residents of Tranquil Streams, including the standing discount I offer to all members. I am not in need of any assistance with the management of my course at this time. The business is financially healthy, and I have no plans to change its operational structure. Sincerely, Jack Callahan, owner, Coyote Run Golf Course. I hit send and leaned back in my chair, satisfied. That, I thought, was the end of that. I had established the facts, restated my ownership, and politely shut down her ridiculous overreach. Implement maintained some payer to land the college axe. Her reply came less than 5 minutes later. It was a single sentence with no greeting and no closing. Colmac, your lack of community spirit has been noted. I stared at that sentence on my screen for a long time. The fake friendliness was gone. The corporate jargon was gone. All that was left was that cold, simple line. It wasn't an argument. It was a threat. And that's when the background noise became a blaring alarm. That was the moment I knew this wasn't going to just go away. This was just the beginning. I wish I could say her threat was just a bluff. But a woman like Karen Rollins doesn't bluff. She doesn't have to. She's the type who plays the long game, dismantling you piece by piece, all while smiling and telling everyone she's building a better community. The first phase of her attack was psychological. It was a poison drip campaign of rumors. I started noticing it when some of my regulars from the HOA, guys I'd been friendly with for years, started acting a little distant. One of them, a decent guy named Frank, finally pulled me aside after a round. "Jack, you gotta tell me," he said, looking genuinely concerned. "What's this I hear about you selling out to a developer? Karen's telling everyone you've got a deal in the works to put up 100 condos here." I just stared at him. Frank? Where in God's name would you hear something like that? This course is my life. I'd sell a kidney before I sold this land. He looked relieved. "That's what I thought. But man, she's convincing. She held a special community preservation meeting last week. Said you refused her generous partnership offer and that the only logical reason was a secret, more lucrative deal. She's painting herself as the only thing standing between this neighborhood and a fleet of bulldozers." And just like that, the narrative was flipped. I was no longer the guy who turned a wasteland into an asset. I was the greedy developer in waiting, and Karen was the valiant protector of the green space. It was brilliant, in a sick way. How do you fight a lie like that? I couldn't exactly go door to door telling people, "Hey, just so you know, I'm not planning on destroying the thing I love most in the world." Any denial would just look like I had something to hide. I was on the defensive, and the war had barely even started. Next came the war of 1,000 paper cuts. The HOA fines. They started showing up in my mailbox every few days, tucked into those same creamy, arrogant envelopes. They were for the most ridiculous, nitpicky things you can imagine. I got a $50 fine for improper coloration of pathway gravel because the stones I used on a service path weren't the HOA-approved shade of beige. I got a $100 fine because a branch from one of my oak trees was allegedly hanging 2 inches over the HOA's airspace above a back fence. My personal favorite was the $75 fine for, quote, prolonged refuse container visibility. Apparently, my commercial dumpsters, which were tucked away behind a fence and had been in the same spot for 5 years, were now considered an eyesore. I had to build an even taller fence around the existing fence. Each fine was a joke, but a joke I had to take seriously. I had to spend hours every week writing formal dispute letters, citing the original agreements, taking pictures as evidence. It was a massive drain on my time and energy, which, I realized, was exactly the point. She was trying to wear me down, to make running my business so aggravating that her offer to take over would start to look appealing. The escalation kicked into high gear when she proved she had influence outside of her little suburban kingdom. That was the day the city inspector showed up. He was a weaselly guy named Thompson with a clipboard and an air of self-importance. He said he was there because of an anonymous complaint about potential code violations. He spent 2 hours poking around my brand new clubhouse and the course's pump house. I knew my place was built to code and then some. I had paid top dollar for the best contractors. But a determined inspector can always find something, and oh, he did. He didn't just find something, he found a golden ticket. "Gonna have to write you up for the drainage system, Mr. Callahan," he said, a little too cheerfully. He claimed the outflow pipes for the course's irrigation runoff were half an inch too narrow in diameter, according to a city ordinance that had been updated 2 years ago. To fix it, he said, would require digging up and replacing the main drainage lines under 3 of my fairways.
I felt the blood drain from my face. That's insane. This system was approved by the city when it was installed. Rules change, he shrugged, scribbling on his clipboard. Progress. You'll get the official notice in the mail. You'll have 90 days to comply. I didn't have to ask what compliance would cost. I knew. It would be tens, maybe hundreds of thousands of dollars. It was a financial death blow. An anonymous complaint and an updated ordinance. It was a setup, plain and simple, and it had Karen's fingerprints all over it. She was moving beyond annoying fines and into the realm of trying to bankrupt me. That night, I got a call from Dave Peterson, the old board member. He sounded agitated. "Jack, I have to tell you something. Karen held another one of her emergency board meetings tonight. I only found out because my neighbor saw the email. She pushed through a resolution. She claims she found an old amendment to your original agreement, something she says Henderson signed, that gives the HOA control if the property becomes a significant community asset. She's officially declaring the ownership of Coyote Run to be in dispute." My hands went cold. "Dave, that's impossible. No such document exists." "I know it and you know it," he said, his voice grim. "But she's waving around a piece of paper, Jack. She's got a piece of paper, and she's telling everyone it's the law. You need to be careful. This woman is not just a bully. She's a shark." He was right. This was the final piece of her plan falling into place. The rumors had turned the community against me. The fines were bleeding me dry. The inspector's report was threatening to bankrupt me, and now she had her legal pretext. Her forged phantom document that gave her the right to do whatever she wanted. She had boxed me in from every possible angle. The breaking point came a few days later. I was driving to the course, my stomach in knots, my mind racing with lawyers and loans, and the sheer injustice of it all. I turned the final corner, and my heart just stopped. There, at the entrance to my driveway, staked right into my grass, was a massive vinyl banner. In huge, cheap-looking letters it read, "Future home of the Tranquil Streams Community Golf Club. Under new management soon." I can't even describe the rage that went through me. It was so brazen. It was such a profound violation. It was like coming home to find a stranger has put up new curtains in your living room. I slammed on the brakes, threw the truck in park, and stormed out. My only thought was to tear that thing down, to rip it to shreds with my bare hands. I grabbed one corner of the banner and pulled, the zip ties holding it to the metal stakes strained. And that's when I heard the siren. A police cruiser, which had been parked just down the road, clearly waiting, pulled up and blocked my truck. I let go of the banner, my heart pounding in my ears. An officer I'd never seen before got out of the car, his hand resting on his hip. He walked toward me with that slow, deliberate cop walk. He didn't look at me. He looked at the banner, then at my sign for Coyote Run. And that's when he did it. He walked right past me, grabbed my beautiful hand-carved wooden sign, the one that had welcomed my customers for 5 years, and with a grunt, wrenched it right out of the ground. The post snapped and the sign fell into the dirt with a pathetic thud. That was the moment from the hook, the moment it all came crashing down. I was no longer a business owner defending his property. I was a suspect on a crime scene that used to be my life. You'd think that having a cop help someone try to steal your property would be the lowest point. It wasn't. The lowest point is what comes after. It's the slow, grinding realization that the system you believed in, the one that's supposed to protect you, is either broken or worse, actively working against you. After the cop left me standing there with the splinters of my sign in my hand, my first thought wasn't to fight. It was to correct. This had to be a colossal misunderstanding. Cops follow the law. The law says this is my land. All I had to do was go to the station, show them my real, legitimate documents, and they would sort it out. They'd probably even apologize. So I drove to the police station, a thick manila folder on the passenger seat. Inside was a certified copy of my property deed and the original signed and notarized permits from both the city and the HOA,
personally signed by Mr. Henderson. It was an ironclad case. The desk sergeant looked at me with bored, seen-it-all eyes as I explained the situation. He told me to wait. I sat for nearly an hour on a hard plastic chair that smelled faintly of disinfectant and despair. Finally, he called my name and led me back to the office of the chief of police himself, a man named Chief Miller. His office was a shrine to the good old boy network. There were mounted fish on the wall, a signed football, and photos of him gripping and grinning with the mayor and other local bigwigs. He was a big man, with a thick neck and a folksy, dismissive air. He leaned back in his leather chair, which groaned under his weight, and steepled his fingers as I laid out my story. He listened, or pretended to. Then I placed my documents on his expansive desk. Here's the deed, Chief. Here are the original permits. This is my land. Your officer had no right. He picked up the deed, glanced at it for maybe 2 seconds, and set it down. He grunted. He didn't even look at the permits. Well, Mr. Callahan, I appreciate you coming in. The thing is, we also have a document from the HOA, presented by Mrs. Rollins. It's a fake, I said, my voice rising. Whatever she showed you is a forgery. He gave me a tired, patronizing smile. Now, how would my officers know that? All they see are 2 competing documents. That makes it a civil matter. It's for the courts to sort out, not the police. We were just there to keep the peace.
Keep the peace? He helped them. He ripped my sign out of the ground.
He removed an object from what is currently considered disputed property to prevent further escalation, the chief said smoothly, the line clearly rehearsed. My advice to you is to get a lawyer. In the meantime, I'd suggest you respect the disputed nature of the property. Yakte. He stood up, signaling the meeting was over. It was a brick wall. A polite, folksy, smiling brick wall. As I walked out, I saw another picture on his wall I hadn't noticed before. It was from the town's annual charity golf tournament. Chief Miller had his arm slung around a beaming man, Karen Rollins' husband. Of course. My next stop was the town's Hall of Records. My plan was to get a certified copy of the original HOA meeting minutes, the one with the appendix detailing my project approval. If the police wouldn't listen, maybe a fresh, officially stamped copy of the town's own records would make a difference. The records office was in the basement of the town hall, a dim, musty place that felt forgotten by time. Behind the counter was the clerk I'd seen once before, Robbie Hayes. He was a nervous, twitchy guy, with a thin mustache that seemed to absorb the sweat from his upper lip. When I told him what I needed, he got this deer-in-the-headlights look. Yeah, sure, Callahan Project 2019, he mumbled, typing furiously into his old computer terminal. He then disappeared into the stacks, the cavernous rows of shelves groaning with binders. He was gone for a long time. When he finally came back, he was wringing his hands and wouldn't meet my eye. Sorry, he said, his voice barely a whisper. There seems to be an issue. An issue? Bless point. Yeah, a computer glitch. From when we were digitizing the archives a while back. I can find the main minutes from that meeting, no problem, but the appendix? The one with your project details? It looks like the file was corrupted. It's gone. I just stared at him. Corrupted. Gone. He was lying, and he was a terrible liar. I could see the panic in his eyes. He looked like a cornered animal. You're telling me the single most important document for my case just vanished? Tom, technology, right? He said with a weak, pathetic laugh. What can you do? I knew then that this was deeper than just Karen and her husband's golf buddy. She had gotten to the records themselves. She was erasing the truth from the official history. Defeated, I did what Chief Miller had advised. I got a lawyer. Anna Chen was everything the chief and Robbie Hayes were not. Sharp, direct, and furious on my behalf. She listened to my whole story, her eyes narrowing with each new detail. This is unbelievable, Jack, she said, pacing her small, neat office. This is a coordinated bad faith attack. Let me see what I can dig up. A week later, she called me back in. The news wasn't good. Okay, she said, sliding a document across the table to me. This is what they're using. It's the amendment you heard about. And I've got to hand it to them. It's a very good forgery. The signature looks just like the examples of Henderson's I have on file. She explained the nightmare I was in. In the eyes of the law, there were now two conflicting official-looking documents. My deed versus her forged amendment. Proving a forgery, she said, was a long, expensive, uphill battle. It would involve handwriting experts, testimony, and a whole lot of legal maneuvering. They're trying to drown you in legal fees, Jack. They know you're just one guy, and they're using the HOA's entire bankroll against you. The final blow landed a few days after that. A courier delivered a thick envelope to my apartment. It was a court order, a temporary injunction.
I immediately called Anna.
What does this mean? I asked, my voice shaking. Her voice on the phone was grim. It means they won, for now. Their lawyer argued that since the ownership is in dispute, all commercial activity should cease until it's resolved, to prevent irreparable harm to the asset. The judge granted it.
So, what does that mean?
It means you're locked out, Jack, she said softly. You can't operate your business. You can't have customers. You can't cut the grass. You can't water the greens. You can't earn a single dollar from Coyote Run until we get this injunction lifted, and that could take months, maybe longer. My income was gone, just like that, cut off by a judge's signature, based on a lie. That evening, I did something I knew I shouldn't. I drove out to my course. I parked across the street, just watching. And there she was, Karen. She was walking the 9th fairway with a small group of residents, pointing and talking animatedly. I could practically hear her through the closed car window. A new swimming pool here, tennis courts over there. She was selling tickets to my funeral. I sat there for maybe an hour, watching the sun set on my perfect greens, which I was no longer allowed to care for. Every system I had trusted, the police, the town records, the courts, had failed me. They had all been manipulated by this one woman. My savings were disappearing, my business was dead, and my dream was being carved up and sold off right in front of my eyes. For the first time, I truly felt it. A cold, heavy wave of utter hopelessness. Maybe it was time to just give up. Maybe she had already won. A few days of that soul-crushing limbo went by. I was a ghost in my own life, just going through the motions. My lawyer Anna was doing what she could, filing motions and preparing for a long, slow fight. But it felt like trying to punch water. There was nothing solid to hit back against. One evening, there was a knock on the door of my apartment. It was Dave Peterson, the old board member. He looked terrible, like he hadn't slept in days. He was holding a crumpled piece of paper. Jack, he said, his voice low and urgent. I've been thinking about that forged document, the date on it, June 14th. I was talking to my wife, and she remembers. We sent the Hendersons a postcard from our trip to the Grand Canyon that summer. And she reminded me, they went on a big trip that year, too. An Alaskan cruise. He flattened the paper on my coffee table. It was a printout of an old social media post from Henderson's daughter. A picture of her parents standing on a ship deck, a glacier in the background. The caption read, Mom and Dad enjoying their big Alaskan adventure. So jealous. I can't find the exact date, Dave said, his finger tapping the screen. But I'm almost certain they were on that cruise the week Karen's phony document was signed. He couldn't have been at a board meeting in town if he was watching whales off the coast of Juneau. A tiny flicker of something stirred in my chest. An alibi. A real alibi. But as quickly as the hope appeared, the reality of it sank in. Dave, this is great, but are you sure about the dates? Can Henderson prove it? With receipts or tickets or something from 6 years ago? Dave's face fell. His wife handles all that, and she's not well. And Henderson's memory for dates is, well, he's 82. Karen's lawyer would tear him apart on the stand. He'd get confused, and it would look like we were the ones making things up. He was right. It was a lead, but it was a flimsy one. It was one old man's foggy memory against a document sitting in the town's official records. Still, it was the first time someone had tried to fight for me. Thank you, Dave, I said, and I meant it. This means a lot. After he left, the flicker of hope died out, leaving the darkness feeling even colder than before. The next day, I had to face the inevitable.
The injunction meant I couldn't run my business, so I had to start shutting things down. I drove out to the clubhouse to begin the heartbreaking process of packing up my office. I was allowed on the property to remove personal belongings, as long as I gave the HOA notice. It felt like being a visitor in my own home.
The office was my sanctuary, full of 5 years of memories. I put up some cardboard boxes and just started taking things off the walls.
A framed photo of the course on opening day. A scorecard from a local high school kid who shot his first ever hole-in-one on the 7th. A goofy trophy from a member guest tournament. My life, reduced to a pile of stuff to be put in storage. To stop myself from thinking, from feeling, I just started clearing out old file cabinets. It was a mindless task. I opened a drawer labeled construction and pulled out a thick, heavy binder. It was from my general contractor, Warren Construction. Inside were all the weekly progress reports from those 2 years I was building the course. I sat on the floor surrounded by empty boxes and just started flipping through the pages. It hurt to see it, to remember the excitement and the hope of that time. Page after page of details, excavation of sand traps for holes 5 and 6 complete, installation of irrigation mainframe ongoing. I was just wallowing in the nostalgia, in the ghost of that long-dead optimism.
And then I saw the date. At the top of a page in neat block letters, Weekly Progress Report, June 10 to June 16th, 2019. My breath caught in my throat. I slowly scanned down the page, my finger tracing the lines. Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and there it was. Thursday, June 14th. Dot. My eyes flew across the entry for that day. It was mostly boring technical stuff about pouring concrete. Pouring of concrete foundation for maintenance shed near 4th Hole Green commenced at 9 a.m. Work halted at 3 p.m. due to heavy rain. But then, the next sentence hit me like a physical blow. Note, HOA President Henderson on site at 2:30 p.m. for mandatory inspection of subterranean drainage channels prior to pour. Signed off on hidden work completion form. I read it again. And a third time. My brain was short-circuiting. The forged document claimed Henderson was at a board meeting, signing away my future at 2:30 in the afternoon. But this official, contemporaneous report from my contractor said he was on my property. He was half a mile away from the clubhouse, standing in the mud looking at pipes. He couldn't be in 2 places at once. My heart started hammering against my ribs. It was something. It was real, but it was still just words on a page. A contradiction, but maybe not definitive proof. And then, like a flash of lightning, another memory from that grueling construction process hit me. A memory of a conversation with Bill Warren, my contractor. He was complaining about all the bureaucratic hoops we had to jump through for the city permits. "It's ridiculous, Jack," he'd said. "They even make us take photos of the rebar and the drainage trenches before we cover them up. Photos! Like they don't trust our work." Photos. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely unlock my phone. I scrolled frantically through my old contacts, my thumb slipping on the screen. Warren, Bill, please be the same number. I hit call. It rang once, twice. Warren Construction.
It's Jack Callahan. "Hey, Jack. Long time no talk. How's the course?" The casual question felt like a knife twisting. "Bill, I need a massive favor. It's an emergency," I said, pacing the small office. I explained the situation, the date, the forged document, the inspection. "You told me you had to take pictures of that stuff for the city, the hidden work inspections. Is there any chance you still have them?" "Nah." There was a pause on the other end of the line. 6 years ago, Jack. Man, that's a deep dive. "All our project files get backed up to a server. Let me see what I can find. Don't go anywhere. ... The next 10 minutes were the longest of my entire life. I just stood there in the middle of the boxes, staring at the wall, listening to the sound of my own ragged breathing. This was it. It was either everything or it was nothing. Then, Bill's voice came back on the line, and there was a note of pure excitement in it.
"Jack, my friend, you are not going to believe this. I found the project archive. I'm in the subfolder for June 2019, and holy crap, I'm looking right at it. Sending it to your email right now."
My laptop was already open. An email notification dinged. The subject line was, "Guess what?" The attachment was a single JPEG file.
My mouse hovered over the download button. I clicked. The image loaded. And there it was. It wasn't a great photo. It was taken on some cheap worksite digital camera, but it was clear as day. Standing in a muddy trench, pointing at a section of black corrugated pipe, was Mr. Henderson. He was wearing an old fishing hat and rubber boots. In the background, you could see the wooden forms for the concrete foundation and a big, ugly cement mixer. And there, in the bottom right-hand corner of the image, was the digital timestamp, burned into the pixels by the camera's internal clock.
6/14/2019, 2:38 p.m. I leaned forward until my forehead was touching the cool screen of my laptop. A single, choked laugh escaped my lips. It was real. It was undeniable. It was a photograph of the truth. Karen hadn't just created a forged document. She had created a forged reality. And I was holding the one thing that could shatter it to pieces. It wasn't a flimsy memory of a cruise. It was a weapon, and I finally knew exactly how I was going to use it.
For a few minutes, I just sat there in my dark, half-packed office, the only light coming from the laptop screen. The photo glowed back at me. It was like staring into a portal to an alternate reality, a reality where the truth still mattered. The shock slowly receded, and in its place, something cold and hard began to form in my gut. It was a feeling I hadn't had since my playing days, standing over a must-make putt to win a match. It was absolute ice-cold clarity. I saved the image to a thumb drive, backed it up to a cloud server, and then emailed it to myself with a subject line that just said, payday. I carefully packed the contractor's binder into a box, but this time it wasn't a box for storage. It was an ammo box.
I didn't even go home. I drove straight to Anna Chin's office, my mind working faster than it had in months. I was no longer thinking about how to survive. I was thinking about how to win.
I got to her office just as she was packing up for the day. She saw the look on my face and immediately put her briefcase down. Jack, what is it?
I didn't say a word. I just walked over to her desk, took out my laptop, and opened the image. I turned the screen toward her. She leaned in, squinting at the picture. She saw Henderson, the mud, the pipe. Then her eyes darted to the timestamp in the corner. She looked back at the photo, then back at the timestamp. A slow smile spread across her face. It wasn't a happy smile. It was the smile of a predator that has just caught the scent of blood in the water. "Oh, you have got to be kidding me," she breathed, sinking into her chair. "Jack, where did you get this?"
Nah, I told her everything. The mindless packing, the construction binder, the memory of the city ordinance, the call to Bill Warren.
When I was done, she leaned back and let out a long, low whistle. "This isn't just a smoking gun, Jack," she said, her voice electric with energy. "This is the whole damn arsenal. This changes everything. We're no longer on defense. We're on offense. Full-scale, scorched earth offense."
For the next hour, we didn't just talk.
We planned. We strategized. It was the most alive I had felt in half a year. Anna was pacing back and forth in front of the large whiteboard on her wall, scribbling notes with a squeaky marker, a general mapping out her battlefield. "Okay, first things first," she said, tapping the board. "The single most important thing is that she does not know we have this. This photo is our ace, and we don't play it until the pot is as big as it can possibly get."
So what do we do? I asked.
We let her build her own gallows, Anna said, a sharp glint in her eye. We proceed with the deposition just like we planned. We let her walk in there, confident and arrogant. We let her sit down, raise her right hand, and swear to tell the truth. And then I'm going to ask her to describe in excruciating detail the board meeting that never happened. I'm going to get her to commit to every last lie on the record under penalty of perjury. She drew a box on the board and wrote Karen's perjury inside it.
Next, she continued, drawing an arrow from the box, we deal with the weasel at the Hall of Records. Robbie Hayes. We subpoena him for a deposition too. We sit him down in a room, just me, you, and him. We show him a copy of the criminal code for perjury and accessory to fraud. We tell him we know about the bribe. And then we show him this picture. We offer him a choice. He can either be a defendant in our lawsuit and go down with Karen, or he can be our star witness.
I'm betting he flips so fast he gets whiplash.
Another box. Hayes flips. ...
But that's not enough, I said, feeling a surge of my own. I don't just want to prove she lied. I want to know why. And where did the money for the bride come from?
Anna smiled again. Exactly, that's step 3. She drew a big $sign on the board. People like Karen are often sloppy with the money because they think no one is looking. We're going to amend our lawsuit. We're no longer just suing for damages from the injunction. We're filing a much broader complaint for tortious interference with business, fraud, and conspiracy. It's a bigger, nastier claim, and it gives us the legal justification to demand a full audit of the HOA's finances since she took office. We're going to subpoena every bank statement, every check, every credit card bill.
The picture was becoming clear.
It wasn't a simple legal defense anymore. It was a meticulous plan to dismantle her entire operation. First, we'd prove she was a liar and a perjurer. Then, we'd prove she was a crook who bribed officials with the HOA's own money.
And what about Dave? And Mr. Henderson? I asked.
Perfect final touch, Anna said. Before we do any of this, you and I are going to pay Mr. Henderson a visit. We're not going to just ask him about his memory. We're going to show him the photo. Seeing himself there, in that trench, on that day, will cement his testimony. We'll get a sworn, notarized affidavit from him describing his real activities on June 14th. His testimony, backed by this photo, becomes unshakable. I looked at the whiteboard. It was a roadmap to victory. Every step was calculated. Every piece had a purpose. There was no room for error. I left Anna's office late that night, walking out into the cool air. The weight on my shoulders was still there, but it had changed. It was no longer the crushing, shapeless burden of despair. It was the heavy, solid weight of a weapon, a plan. For 6 months, I had been the prey, constantly looking over my shoulder, waiting for the next attack. But not anymore. The hunt was over. Now, I was the hunter, and I was ready to set my trap. The first step in our counterattack felt less like a legal maneuver and more like an act of restoration. Anna and I drove out to Mr. Henderson's house, a neat little brick ranch with a perfectly manicured lawn. He greeted us at the door, looking frail and worried, his wife hovering behind him. We sat in his living room, which smelled of old books and lemon polish. I could tell he was anxious, trying to dredge up 6-year-old memories under the weight of a legal battle. Mr. Henderson, Anna began gently, I want you to know we are not here to put you on the spot. We are here to show you something. I slid the contractor's binder across the coffee table and opened it to the weekly report. I pointed to the entry for June 14th. He leaned in, his brow furrowed in concentration as he read it. Then I handed him the photograph. He took the picture in his trembling hands and stared at it. His eyes, which had been cloudy with uncertainty, suddenly sharpened. A flicker of recognition, then a wave of indignant anger washed over his face. My word, he whispered, his voice shaking with emotion. My fishing hat. I remember this day. It was pouring rain later on. We were rushing to get that inspection done before the heavens opened up. That lying woman. He looked up at me, his eyes now blazing. She put my name on a lie, Jack. My name! Getting his sworn affidavit after that was easy. It was like the photograph had unlocked the file cabinet in his memory. He remembered the conversation with Bill Warren, the mud, everything. As he signed his name at the bottom of the affidavit, his hand was firm and steady. It was our first small, solid victory. The next step was the big one, Karen's deposition. We all gathered in a sterile conference room at a neutral law firm. There was a long, polished table, a court reporter with her little machine, me and Anna on one side, and Karen and her slick, expensive-looking lawyer on the other. Karen looked completely unfazed. She gave me a tight, condescending smile as she sat down, as if this were all just a minor annoyance she had to deal with before getting back to her important work. The whole thing was a masterclass by Anna. She was calm, polite, and absolutely lethal. She let Karen talk, guiding her gently into the abyss. So, Mrs. Rollins, Anna said, could you please describe for the record the events of the HOA board meeting on June 14th, 2019? Karen launched into her performance,
She described the room, the weather outside, the coffee they were drinking. She even remembered a funny little joke Mr. Henderson supposedly told before he signed the amendment. She poured detail after detail into her fabricated story, creating a rich, textured, completely fictional account of the day. All of it under oath. My hands were clenched into fists under the table, but I kept my face a perfect mask of stone, just as Anna had instructed.
Anna just kept nodding. And you're certain Mr. Henderson was present and signed the document in front of you? Absolutely, Karen said with unwavering confidence. I saw him do it with my own eyes. Sparto.
Anna smiled faintly. Thank you, Mrs. Rollins. No further questions at this time. We walked out of that room, and I felt like I needed a shower, but Anna was buzzing. She did it, she whispered as we waited for the elevator. She signed her own confession. She has no idea what's coming. Roth, of course, a cornered animal is a dangerous one. We had barely gotten back to Anna's office when the first counterpunch landed. Karen's lawyer, true to form, tried to bury us. He filed a motion to have our lawsuit dismissed as frivolous and vexatious, a legal tactic designed to paint us as the harassers. Simultaneously, he hit us with a massive discovery request, demanding a decade's worth of my personal and business financial records, every email I'd ever sent about the course, every receipt for every bag of fertilizer. It was a mountain of paperwork designed to do one thing: bleed me dry and distract us from our own attack. For a moment, panic flared in my chest. How can we fight this? It'll take me months to get all this stuff together. It's not well into this chapter. My thing. Anna was completely calm. It's a classic move, Jack. It's what they do when they don't have the facts on their side. Don't worry. We'll comply. We have nothing to hide. We'll give them every stupid piece of paper they want. It won't change the truth, and it won't stop what's coming for them. Her confidence was like a rock. She didn't flinch, so I didn't either. Our next move was to corner the weak link, Robbie Hayes, the town clerk. His deposition was held in the same soulless conference room, but the atmosphere was completely different. There was no confidence on the other side of the table this time, just pure, unadulterated terror. Robbie was sweating through his cheap suit, his eyes darting around the room as if looking for an escape route. Anna didn't play games with him. She laid out a copy of Henderson's sworn affidavit and the time-stamped photograph on the table. Mr. Hayes, she said, her voice quiet but firm. This photo proves that Mr. Henderson was not at the board meeting Karen Rollins described under oath. This affidavit confirms it. That means the document you officially registered in the town archives is a forgery. Robbie started to stammer. I don't know anything about that. I just file what I'm given. Accessory to fraud is a felony, Mr. Hayes, Anna said, cutting him off. It carries a potential prison sentence. Perjury, which you would be committing if you lie to us right now, is also a felony. She let that hang in the air for a moment. However, the district attorney often shows leniency to those who cooperate fully in exposing a larger criminal enterprise. She slid a blank piece of paper and a pen across the table. You have a choice to make right now. You can go down with Karen Rollins, or you can tell us the truth. That's all it took. He broke. The whole story came tumbling out in a torrent of whispered confessions. The meeting with Karen, the envelope full of cash, the lie about the corrupted digital file. He was so terrified he was practically vibrating. We had our cooperating witness. The final piece of the puzzle was the money. Our new, broader lawsuit gave Anna the power to subpoena the HOA's financial records. A few weeks later, 2 giant boxes of bank statements and accounting ledgers were delivered to her office. It was a sea of numbers. Their parent, Anna, hired a forensic accountant, a stone-faced woman named Brenda, who seemed to get a genuine thrill from finding financial crimes. For 2 days they were buried in paper, fueled by coffee and takeout pizza. I'd stop by and the office would be completely silent except for the rustle of paper and the clicking of a calculator. The call came late on the second night. I was trying to watch a movie, but I couldn't concentrate. My phone buzzed. It was Anna. Got her, was all she said. My heart leapt. What did you find? And it's beautiful in its stupidity, Jack. A payment for $10,000 to a company called Strategic Community Consulting LLC. The payment was for a comprehensive review of property covenants. She paused for dramatic effect.
The company was formed 3 days before the payment was issued. It has no website, no phone number, no other clients, and its registered agent, the owner, is the brother of Robert Hayes' wife. I just sank back into my couch. The money trail. The final undeniable link that connected the bribe to the HOA's bank account. Anna's voice was filled with a cold, triumphant satisfaction. "It's over, Jack. We have it all. Her perjury, on the record, the confession from her co-conspirator, and the canceled check showing she used her neighbor's money to pay the bride. The trap is set. All we have to do now is spring it." The final showdown didn't happen at a heated HOA meeting or on the lawn of my course. It happened in the quiet, wood-paneled formality of a courtroom. It was just a hearing for our motion to dismiss Karen's claims and lift the injunction, but Anna had made sure to notify every single member of the HOA about the time and place, framing it as a critically important update on the community's legal standing. The room was packed. I saw them all file in. The people who had given me the cold shoulder, the ones who had whispered about my secret deal. They were all there, drawn by the promise of drama. Dave Peterson was in the front row, giving me a solid, reassuring nod. Mr. Henderson was there too, looking dignified and resolute in a tweed jacket. On the other side of the aisle sat Karen. She was dressed in a sharp, navy blue power suit, her lawyer by her side. She still had that air of untouchable arrogance, but I could see a faint tension around her eyes. She was a queen holding court, but she knew there was a rebellion brewing just outside the castle walls. She just had no idea we had already tunneled inside. When the judge called our case, Anna rose. She was the picture of calm professionalism. She didn't start with accusations or anger. She started with a story. "Your Honor," she began, her voice clear and steady, "this case is about a piece of land. But more than that, it's about a piece of paper, a document which the defendant, Mrs. Rollins, claims is the basis for her HOA's actions against my client." She submitted a copy of the forged amendment. The defendant claims this document was signed by the former HOA president, Mr. Gerald Henderson, on the afternoon of June 14, 2019, during a board meeting at the community clubhouse. Karen nodded slightly, a smug look on her face. Her lawyer looked bored. This was all old news to them. "The problem, Your Honor," Anna continued, "is that board meeting never took place, and Mr. Henderson couldn't possibly have signed this document. We have a sworn affidavit from Mr. Henderson stating as much." She submitted the affidavit. Karen's lawyer stirred, ready to object, probably on the grounds of an old man's faulty memory, but Anna didn't give him the chance. Now, an affidavit is a powerful thing, but memory can be tricky. So we looked for something more concrete. We found the official weekly report from the contractor who built my client's course. She placed the binder on the evidence table. This report, dated for the week of June 14th, clearly states that Mr. Henderson was on site, half a mile away from the clubhouse, inspecting a drainage trench at the exact time he was supposedly at this meeting. A murmur went through the audience. Karen's face tightened. She shot a venomous look at her lawyer, who was now sitting up a little straighter. "But even a contractor's report is just paper, isn't it?" Anna said, her voice dropping a little, drawing everyone in. "It's so much better when you have a photograph." And then she did it. She pulled out a large, glossy print of the photo and placed it on an easel facing the judge and the gallery. The effect was instantaneous. A collective gasp went through the room. There was Mr. Henderson, clear as day, standing in the mud in his fishing hat, and there in the corner was the timestamp. I risked a glance at Karen. The color had completely drained from her face. She was staring at the photograph as if it were a ghost. Her mask of composure didn't just crack, it shattered. Her lawyer looked at the photo, then at her, and I could see the precise moment he realized he'd been lied to, the moment he knew his case was dead. "Your Honor," Anna said, letting the image hang in the air, "this photograph proves beyond any doubt that the defendant's entire claim is based on a fraudulent document, but it gets worse." She then produced the transcript of Karen's deposition. Because just a few weeks ago, under oath, Mrs. Rollins described her fictional meeting in vivid detail. She didn't just present a forged document, she committed perjury to support it. The murmurs in the crowd grew louder. People were turning to look at Karen, their faces a mixture of shock and dawning anger. She seemed to shrink in her chair, avoiding their gazes.
Now, you might ask, why would a respected community leader do this? We asked ourselves the same question, so we looked a little deeper. This was the kill shot.
We deposed the town clerk, Mr. Robert Hayes, Anna announced. The room went silent again. And Mr. Hayes has provided a full confession, admitting that Mrs. Rollins paid him $5,000 in cash to lose the real documents and enter her forgery into the town's official records.
If the photo was a gasp, this was a thunderclap. People were openly staring at Karen now, their expressions hardening into contempt. She looked physically ill.
And where would that bribe money come from? Anna asked rhetorically. We subpoenaed the HOA's financial records, and we found it, a $10,000 payment from the HOA's own bank account, money paid by her neighbors funneled to a shell corporation owned by the clerk's brother-in-law. She used their money to defraud them.
Anna turned from the judge and looked directly at the crowd. She didn't do this for the community. She did this for power. And she used you to pay for it. The judge had heard enough. He held up a hand, silencing the chaotic buzz in the room. He took off his glasses and rubbed the bridge of his nose, looking down at the mountain of evidence Anna had built. Then he looked at Karen, and his expression was one of pure, unadulterated disgust.
Mrs. Rollins, he said, and his voice was cold steel. In my 15 years on this bench, I have rarely seen such a calculated, malicious, and fundamentally corrupt abuse of a position of trust. You have not only attempted to steal this man's livelihood through fraud and forgery, you have implicated public officials, you have committed perjury before this court, and you have embezzled funds from the very people you swore an oath to serve.
He picked up his gavel.
The injunction against Mr. Callahan is hereby dissolved, effective immediately. The defendant's claims are dismissed with prejudice. And I am ordering the Tranquil Streams Homeowners Association to pay all of Mr. Callahan's legal fees and compensatory damages to be determined in a future hearing.
He wasn't done. He looked past Karen to the prosecutor's liaison sitting in the front row.
Furthermore, the judge said, his voice booming in the silent room, I am referring this entire matter, every document, every transcript, every affidavit, to the district attorney's office with my strongest recommendation for a full criminal investigation into charges including but not limited to fraud, perjury, bribery of a public official, and embezzlement.
He brought the gavel down. Crack! The sound echoed through the courtroom. It was the sound of justice. It was the sound of my world snapping back into place. So Karen just sat there, completely broken. Her lawyer was already stuffing papers into his briefcase, distancing himself from her as if she were radioactive. The residents of Tranquil Streams were on their feet, some looking at me with apology in their eyes, others directing pure fury at the woman who had been their leader just minutes before. It was over. She hadn't just been beaten, she had been publicly, surgically, and irrevocably dismantled. It's funny how quiet things can get after a storm. It's been about a year since that day in court, and the silence that settled over my life is the best sound I've ever heard. The roar of injustice has been replaced by the whisper of the wind through the pine trees, and the gentle thwack of a golf ball being struck cleanly on the first tee. Coyote Run is doing better than ever. The whole sordid affair, ironically, turned out to be the best marketing I never wanted. People got invested in the story. They'd come from 2 towns over, not just to play around, but to shake my hand and say, good for you for standing up to her. My business doubled. I even managed to hire a couple of guys to help with the groundskeeping, and I'm finally drawing up plans for that back 9 I've always dreamed of. As for Karen, well, her world collapsed just as spectacularly as she tried to collapse mine. The district attorney did in fact press charges. Faced with an avalanche of evidence, she took a plea deal to avoid jail time. She got 5 years of probation, a hefty fine, and was ordered to do 1,000 hours of community service. I heard she's picking up trash along the highway, which has a certain poetic justice to it. The civil judgment forced her and her husband to sell their house to pay my legal fees and damages. They moved away a few months ago. I haven't heard a word about them since, and I hope I never do. Robbie Hayes, the town clerk, got off lighter for cooperating. He lost his job and got 2 years probation. The HOA, under the new and very sensible leadership of Dave Peterson, is quiet and functional.
They handle road maintenance and the community pool, and they leave everyone else the hell alone. It's amazing how well things work when the person in charge isn't a power-mad tyrant.
But the biggest change wasn't in the neighborhood. It was in me. For years, I think I was defined by my failures. The knee that gave out, the marriage that ended, the career I lost. I built this place to hide from all that, to create a perfect little world where I could be in control. Then Karen came along and tried to take that too. And in fighting her, I learned something. My greatest strength wasn't my swing or my focus. It was my meticulous, almost obsessive nature, the very thing my ex-wife used to call boring. It was the detailed records, the carefully filed reports, the memory for obscure city ordinances. The boring stuff is what saved me.
I learned that you can do everything right, follow every rule, and someone can still try to bulldoze you with lies. But I also learned that the truth, if you can prove it, is a more powerful weapon than any lie ever could be. The fight was the worst thing I've ever been through, but it burned away the last of that old bitterness. I'm not a victim anymore. I'm not hiding. This place isn't my sanctuary from the world. It's my place in the world, and I earned the right to be here.
Sometimes, late in the afternoon when the light gets golden,
I'll take a walk out to the 4th hole. I'll stand by the green, right near the spot where the maintenance shed is, and I'll look at the ground. It's just grass now, perfect and green. But I know what's underneath. I know the story of the pipes and the mud and the photo that changed everything. It's no longer just the 4th hole to me. It's a monument. It's a reminder that sometimes you have to fight for your piece of the earth, and that the quiet, boring truth, if you hold on to it long enough, can be the loudest thing in the room. And as the sun sets over my course, my land, I just breathe. And for the first time in a long, long time, it feels like I'm finally home.